Sarah, Eleanor Vance said, her voice as crisp as the Los Angeles November air, my husband and I are hosting Thanksgiving this year. I expect nothing less than perfection. Sarah stood patiently, her hands clasped behind her back, her simple black uniform immaculate against the sterile white marble of the kitchen. She nodded once. Yes, Mrs. Vance. The kitchen itself was a testament to cold perfection, a vast, gleaming space of stainless steel and dark wood in the wealthy Los Angeles neighborhood. It was a chilly morning 1 week before the holiday, and the mansion was already filled with expensive, impersonal autumn decorations. Tasteful, colorless gourds sat in glass bowls, and silk wreaths hung on doors, utterly devoid of warmth. Eleanor, wrapped in designer loungewear that likely cost more than Sarah's monthly rent, tapped a long, manicured fingernail on the iPad in her hand. The guest list is 30. This isn't just a family dinner, it's business. Everything from the appetizers to the polish on the silverware must be flawless. She handed Sarah a multi-page printout of tasks. As Sarah took the list, Eleanor paused, tilting her head with a smile that never reached her eyes. I do hope you understand the standards of a proper American Thanksgiving, Sarah. It might be different from what you're used to. The microaggression hung in the air, sharp and clear. Sarah merely held her professional gaze. I understand perfectly, ma'am. Eleanor gave a dismissive little hum and turned, her silk robe whispering as she exited the kitchen, leaving Sarah alone in the echoing silence. Sarah scanned the impossibly long list, tasks that would require her to work 16-hour days until the holiday. Her shoulders sagged for just a moment before she took a deep breath and tied her apron tighter. A few minutes later, the silence was broken by the sound of small, rapid footsteps. 6-year-old Leo Vance appeared in the doorway, his bare feet silent on the cold marble. He was small for his age, clutching his ever-present tablet, his fine blonde hair messy from sleep. His eyes, large and lonely in his pale face, lit up the moment he saw her. He ignored the kitchen entryway where his stepmother had just stood and ran directly to Sarah, hugging her leg tightly. Sarah! Sarah! Can we build the pillow fort before Dad gets home? All the professional stiffness melted from Sarah. Her face, which had been a mask of patient servitude for Eleanor, softened instantly with genuine, radiant warmth. She knelt, placing her hand on his head. I'll have time later, sweetie. I promise, she whispered, her voice low and kind. But first, breakfast. How about oatmeal? Leo wrinkled his nose but nodded, happy just to be in her presence. He climbed onto a kitchen stool, watching her every move as she measured oats and milk, chattering about a video game on his tablet. The back door opened, and Arthur Vance entered, deep in a stressful phone call. He was a tall man in his mid-50s, his expensive suit already rumpled. Just move the funds, I don't care what it takes, he barked into his phone, his brow furrowed. Dad! Leo cried out, his face bright with a hope that was almost painful to watch. He jumped off the stool and ran toward his father. Arthur held up a hand, annoyed, not even looking down at his son. Not now, Leo. The boy's face crumpled. He stopped, deflated, and slowly retreated to the safety of the kitchen. He climbed back onto his stool, his small shoulders slumped. Sarah watched the exchange, her heart aching for the boy. She quietly slid a cracker across the counter to him, which he took without a word. From the hallway, Eleanor watched this silent exchange. Her eyes weren't on her husband or her stepson. They were fixed on Sarah, and her expression narrowed with a visible, cold disdain for the bond the maid shared with the boy. The rest of the morning passed in a blur of chores. Sarah prepped vegetables, made lists, and began the arduous task of polishing the heavy, ornate family silver. She worked methodically, the rhythmic motion of the cloth a small comfort in the tense household. Leo sat quietly at the table, playing a game on his tablet, his presence a silent show of support. Suddenly, Arthur Vance stormed back into the house, his earlier stress now replaced by a raw, visible panic. His face was pale, his phone call over. Eleanor, he called out, his voice echoing in the grand foyer. Have you been in my office? The safe is open. And just like that, the trap is set. The safe is open, $800,000 is gone, and we all know who they're going to look at first. If you are already hooked on this story and you believe Sarah deserves to have her truth heard, Show your support by commenting with the word truth down below. We read every single one. Here at the Black King channel, we are dedicated to telling powerful stories that shine a light in dark places, just like this one. If you believe in what we do, and you must see how a 6-year-old boy's tablet changes everything, please subscribe and make sure you ring that notification bell. Your support is what allows us to continue bringing these inspiring narratives to you. Thank you for being here. $800,000, Arthur whispered, his voice shaking as he stared into the empty safe. It's gone. The entire down payment. He stumbled back from the small, heavy door set into the wall of his mahogany-paneled study. The room, usually a sanctuary of calm and order, now felt violated. Eleanor rushed to his side, her hand flying to her chest in a gesture of perfect, practiced shock. Oh, Arthur. No. It can't be. Sarah remained frozen by the kitchen door, the silver polishing cloth still clutched in her hand. A cold dread, sharper than the November chill, crept up her spine. She could feel the weight of their gazes shift, landing on her. Leo, who had followed the adults in the commotion, stood silently at the top of the grand foyer staircase, clutching his tablet. He watched his stepmother's face. Unlike his father's genuine panic, Eleanor's expression was different. Her eyes, for just a fraction of a second, darted toward Sarah. It wasn't fear. It was calculation. Arthur ran a trembling hand through his hair. Who? Who knew the combination? Only me, you and. His eyes, clouded with stress and suspicion, landed fully on Sarah. Sarah's breath hitched. Mr. Vance, Eleanor seized the moment. She placed a comforting hand on her husband's arm, her voice dripping with false reluctance. Arthur, darling. I didn't want to believe it. I didn't want to say anything. Say what? Arthur demanded. What did you see, Eleanor? I saw her. Sarah, leaving your study earlier this morning. She was dusting, she said, but she looked so flustered. She must have seen the combination over your shoulder at some point. Eleanor's eyes filled with crocodile tears. She leaned in, lowering her voice to a sympathetic whisper. We all know people like her. They get desperate. Especially around the holidays. The implication was disgusting. A poisoned arrow aimed directly at Sarah's race and her class. People like her. No. Sarah's voice was sharp, desperate. That's not true. Mr. Vance, I swear. I was in the kitchen all morning. I never went near your study. Ask Leo. I was with him. Arthur, already stressed about his finances from the phone call in Chapter 1, was now facing a loss of $800,000. Eleanor's easy, prejudice stereotype provided a simple, immediate answer. It was easier to believe the black help, was the culprit than to face a more complicated truth. He looked at Sarah, his face a mask of cold suspicion. Sarah, it's $800,000. Stop lying. Did you think we wouldn't notice? I am not lying. Sarah pleaded, tears of anger and humiliation welling in her eyes. Why would I do that? I love Leo. You know me. I thought I did, Arthur said coldly. She didn't do it. The voice, high and piercing, came from the staircase. Leo was screaming, his small body trembling. You're lying. Sarah didn't do it. He ran down the steps, his tablet clutched to his chest like a shield. Leo, go to your room. Eleanor snapped, her mask slipping for a second. You're the liar. Leo yelled, pointing at his stepmother. Enough. Arthur roared. He grabbed Leo's arm, stopping him before he could reach Sarah. He looked at his son, then at the terrified maid, and his face hardened. The doubts were gone, replaced by a terrible, misplaced certainty. He turned to the large, silent security guard who had appeared at the sound of the shouting. Sarah has to leave. Escort her out. Now. Mr. Vance, please. Sarah begged, the floor dropping out from beneath her. You can't do this. I'm innocent. Dad, no. Don't let them. Leo was screaming, sobbing, struggling against his father's grip. She didn't do it. She didn't do it. The guard took Sarah's arm in a firm grip. She didn't resist, her body numb with shock. She was dragged toward the door, her eyes locked on Leo. His small, tear-streaked face was the last thing she saw as the heavy oak door slammed shut behind her, echoing the sound of her life falling apart. The heavy oak door slammed shut, the sound echoing the finality of her dismissal. Sarah stood on the curb, the chill of the morning air seeping into her thin uniform, clutching only her small purse. The massive, uncaring facade of the Vance mansion blurred before her eyes. She was disposable. In one morning, Eleanor had taken her job, her dignity, and her only means of supporting her family. Back inside the house, Leo's screams faded as he was carried upstairs. He clutched his tablet, his small fingers white at the knuckles, his eyes streaming with tears as he watched Eleanor through the window. His stepmother wasn't crying. She wasn't even upset. Her face, no longer panicked, was smooth and composed. She pulled out her phone and made a call, a faint, satisfied smile playing on her lips as she spoke to her lover Marcus. Sarah finally moved, her legs feeling like lead as she walked the long blocks to the bus stop. The ride home was a blur of shame and disbelief. Her apartment, a small, sparsely furnished studio in a working-class neighborhood, felt even emptier than usual. It was clean, but the worn couch and chipped paint spoke of her constant financial struggle. Her first instinct was survival. She sat at her small kitchen table and looked at the framed photo of her sick mother, the reason she endured Eleanor's daily condescension. The money for her mother's next treatment was due, and now. She pushed the panic down and opened her laptop, searching for new agency postings. She found one, a temporary position for a family downtown. She called immediately. The agent was friendly, almost enthusiastic. "Oh yes, we need someone right away. Your resume looks good. Where did you last work?" "I was at the Vance estate." "Arthur Vance," Sarah said. The line went silent for a beat too long. The agent's tone shifted, becoming brisk and cold. "Oh, I see. You know, I'm so sorry, dear. It looks like that position was just filled. Nothing available." The line clicked dead. Sarah stared at the phone. It wasn't a coincidence. It was a blacklisting. Eleanor hadn't just fired her. She had poisoned the well, ensuring no one in this city would hire her. The despair was suffocating. Miles away, in the cold luxury of the Vance mansion, Leo was engaged in his own battle. He refused to eat the expensive sushi takeout Eleanor had ordered for lunch. He just sat at the table, silent, staring at the empty chair where Sarah usually sat. "I want Sarah," he repeated mechanically, his voice hoarse from crying. Eleanor, annoyed by the interruption to her celebratory mood, finally snapped. "Sarah is a thief, Leo. She stole from your father. She's gone. Get over it." "She's not," he yelled, his small fists clenched. "That's enough," Eleanor said, her voice dangerously calm. "You'll stay in your room until you can learn to have a civil tongue in your head." She grabbed his arm and dragged him to his large, cold bedroom, locking the door from the outside. "You can think about your attitude in there." Leo was left alone, surrounded by expensive, unplayed-with toys. But he wasn't thinking about his attitude. He was thinking about Sarah. He was thinking about the lie. That night, long after the house fell silent, he made his decision. He pulled his school backpack from the closet. He packed his tablet, the charger, and the single cracker Sarah had discreetly given him just that morning. He remembered Sarah's address. He'd seen it once on an emergency contact list pinned inside the kitchen pantry. He dragged his desk chair to the ground floor window, climbed up, and quietly unlatched it. He pushed the screen out, dropped his bag to the soft grass below, and climbed out. He didn't look back. He just ran. Hours later, Sarah, who hadn't slept, was sitting on her couch, staring at her mother's photo, wondering what she was going to do. A sound from the hallway startled her, a tiny, desperate knock on her apartment door. She froze. It was past midnight. She crept to the door, peering through the peephole. Nothing. She was about to turn away when the knock came again, weaker this time. She unlatched the deadbolt and opened the door a crack. She looked down. There, shivering, terrified, and utterly alone, stood Leo. "Sarah," he cried, his voice breaking as he burst into fresh tears. "I ran away." Just imagine that. A 6-year-old boy, running all alone through a cold city, just to find the one person who ever showed him kindness, the same person his family just framed and destroyed. What an incredible act of loyalty and bravery. If you are as moved by Leo's courage as we are, show that you're standing with him and Sarah by commenting the word brave down below. We see you. Here at the Black King channel, we believe in showing the truth, especially when the most vulnerable are finding the courage to fight back against injustice. You are not going to want to miss what Sarah does next. If you need to see how this one act of kindness changes everything, subscribe to our channel right now and make sure you hit that notification bell so you don't miss a single moment. Leo. Oh my God, Leo, are you okay? You're freezing. Sarah's panic instantly overrode her own despair. She pulled the shivering 6-year-old out of the dark, drafty hallway and into the relative warmth of her small apartment, quickly locking the deadbolt behind them. He was trembling violently, his thin pajamas damp from the night air, his feet bare and covered in grime. I'm sorry, Sarah, he chattered, his teeth knocking together. I got lost. I didn't know where else to go. Shisha, it's okay. You're safe now. She grabbed her only warm blanket from the back of the couch, a faded quilt her grandmother had made, and wrapped it tightly around his small shoulders. As she held him, rubbing his arms to bring back some warmth, she couldn't help but remember how cold and impersonal his own bedroom was, a showroom filled with expensive toys he never played with. She sat him on the couch. Are you hungry? Leo nodded, his eyes wide and frightened. Eleanor wouldn't let me eat. She said I was bad. I'm so hungry. A fresh wave of white-hot anger surged through Sarah. She had been fired, humiliated, and blacklisted, but hearing that Eleanor had starved a 6-year-old child was too much. She pushed the rage down, focusing only on the boy. Well, you're not bad. You're just hungry. She went to her small, half-empty fridge. The reality of her own situation stared back at her, a carton of milk, half a stick of butter, and not much else. But in the bread box, she found the end of a loaf of bread, and in the deli drawer, 2 precious slices of American cheese. It was simple, but it was food. She quickly made him a grilled cheese sandwich on her small stovetop, the smell of browning butter filling the tiny apartment. She poured him a large cup of milk, which she'd been saving for her own breakfast. She placed the plate and glass on her worn coffee table. Leo stared at the simple golden brown sandwich like it was a 5-star feast. He picked it up with both hands and took a huge bite, the melted cheese stretching. He sighed, a sound of pure relief. This is better than the mansion, he said quietly, his mouth full. Sarah watched him eat, her heart breaking and swelling at the same time. He was just a little boy, caught in the middle of something ugly, who had crossed a dangerous city in the dark to find the only person he trusted. She knew she couldn't keep him. With a heavy sigh, she pulled out her cell phone. Her fingers hovered over the contact labeled Mr. Vance. Calling him felt like swallowing glass, but she had to. Mr. Vance, she said, her voice clipped and professional when he picked up on the first ring. Leo is here. He's at my apartment. He's safe. She gave him the address and hung up before he could say anything. The drive must have been terrifyingly fast. Less than 20 minutes later, there was a frantic, pounding knock on the door that rattled the entire frame. Leo jumped, terrified, spilling a little milk. It's okay, Sarah said gently, putting a hand on his shoulder. It's just your dad. She opened the door. Arthur Vance burst in, his eyes wild. He was not the cold, calculating businessman from the study. He was a terrified father, his hair undone, his suit jacket missing. Leo, he gasped, rushing past Sarah and pulling his son into a desperate hug. Oh my God, Leo. Are you okay? I was so worried. I've been calling the police. He held Leo at arm's length, checking him for injuries. Only when he was satisfied his son was unharmed did he finally look at Sarah. His gaze traveled from her worried, exhausted face to the half-eaten sandwich on the plate, to the empty fridge visible just behind her. His expression, so full of anger just hours before, completely crumpled. The shame was palpable, a heavy weight in the small room. He crossed the city, Arthur whispered, his voice hoarse. He crossed the entire city for you. He sat heavily on the edge of her worn-out armchair, burying his face in his hands for a moment. He hasn't eaten, Sarah. Not since you left. He just shut down. He wouldn't talk. Eleanor said he was being difficult. He looked at the floor, unable to meet her eyes. I have no right to ask. I know what I did. I was a fool. His voice cracked. But please. He looked up, his eyes begging. Just for Leo. Can you come back? Just until after Thanksgiving? I'll pay. Double. Triple. Whatever you want. He needs you. Sarah looked at Arthur's desperate, broken face. Then she looked at Leo, who had crawled off the couch and was now clinging to her hand, his eyes pleading wordlessly. Her anger was still there, a hot coal in her chest, but the sight of Leo. I won't do it for you, she said, her voice clear and strong. I'll do it for him. Arthur nodded, the relief flooding his face. Thank you. Thank you, Sarah. The ride back to the mansion was heavy with unspoken words. Arthur drove. Sarah sat in the passenger seat staring straight ahead, and Leo was in the back. As they drove through the opulent gates, bathed in the cold blue light of the security lamps, Leo sat in the back seat, clutching his tablet. He knew the fight wasn't over. He quietly opened his backpack, turned on the voice recorder app, and hid the tablet deep inside. He zipped the bag almost shut, leaving just a tiny opening. He knew Eleanor was the real enemy. You're back. Eleanor's smile was a razor-thin line of ice as Sarah walked back into the mansion, holding Leo's hand. Arthur, darling, I thought we agreed she was a thief. Arthur, still raw with shame and relief, flinched. She's here for Leo, Eleanor. That's all. Just until after the holiday. He wouldn't meet Sarah's eyes, nor could he fully stand up to his wife. He quickly mumbled something about an urgent call and disappeared into his study, leaving Sarah alone in the foyer with the two of them. Eleanor stepped closer, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper. I don't know what trick you pulled, but don't get comfortable. You're still just the help. You're leaving Friday, right after the party. This time for good. Sarah just looked at her, then calmly took Leo's backpack. I'm going to get Leo cleaned up, she said, her voice steady. She guided the boy up the grand staircase, feeling Eleanor's hateful gaze burning into her back. The next 2 days were a quiet, suffocating war. Arthur was conveniently called away on an overnight business trip, a trip Eleanor had insisted was vital. His absence left the mansion entirely under Eleanor's control. She shadowed Sarah, criticizing her every move. The turkey Sarah was prepping was too small. The cranberries were too tart. She made Sarah polish the silver again, claiming she'd found a smudge. Sarah endured it all, her focus solely on Leo. She ignored the barbs, the insults, the constant attempts to provoke her. She and Leo operated in their own private bubble of warmth. They baked pumpkin bread. They read stories. And everywhere Leo went, his backpack, with the tablet hidden inside, went with him. He was a 6-year-old spy. He'd sit in the hallway pretending to play a game on his phone at decoy while the tablet in his bag, propped open just a crack, was silently recording audio. On Wednesday afternoon, the day before Thanksgiving, a sleek black car pulled up. A man in an expensive suit, Marcus, stepped out. Eleanor greeted him at the door with a kiss on the cheek, just a little too familiar for a simple business partner. Marcus, how wonderful you could make it, she cooed. Just in time to discuss the Thanksgiving merger. Leo, watching from the top of the stairs, silently aimed his tablet's camera through the banister rails. He captured the look they shared, a glance of shared conspiracy, of victory. Let's go to the library, Eleanor said, taking Marcus's arm. We have so much to finalize before our trip. Leo's heart hammered. Trip? He grabbed his backpack, slung it over one shoulder, and crept down the stairs. The library doors were thick and heavy, but they hadn't clicked fully shut. He pushed one open just enough to slip inside, his small body disappearing behind a large, dark leather desk near the fireplace. He pointed the tablet's microphone toward the voices, his small hands trembling. He heard the clink of glasses. Eleanor laughed, a sound Leo had never heard before, a genuine, cold laugh. It's done, she said, her voice clear in the quiet room. The $800,000 transfer is complete. It's sitting in the Costa Rica account. And Arthur? Marcus asked. He suspects nothing. Framing the Black Maid was perfect. Eleanor's voice was laced with triumph. Arthur was so blinded by prejudice, he didn't even question it. It was too easy. He just needed someone to blame, and she was right there. Leo felt a hot tear roll down his cheek. She said it. She said it. And he's letting us borrow his jet for our Thanksgiving trip? Marcus asked. He thinks I'm visiting my sister in Aspen, Eleanor sneered. He even offered his pilot. By the time he gets back from his business trip tomorrow and realizes I'm not here, we'll be on a beach and the account will be empty. He'll be ruined. And we'll be free. Marcus raised his glass. To you, Eleanor. You really are brilliant. To us, she said. Leo, shaking, fumbled with the tablet, trying to save the recording. His finger slipped. The volume, which he thought was off, suddenly activated. A soft beep-beep sound, the tablet's low battery warning, echoed from under the desk. The clinking of glasses stopped. The library went dead silent. What was that? Eleanor hissed. Marcus's head snapped toward the desk. It came from over there. Leo crammed his hand over his mouth, his eyes wide with terror. He could see Marcus's polished shoes as he stood up. He heard the heavy, measured footsteps walk slowly, deliberately, toward his hiding spot. The man's dark, imposing shadow fell over the desk, blocking out the light. Just as Marcus reached down to grab the tablet, Arthur Vance's voice boomed from the doorway. Eleanor. The bank just called. They're reporting an $800,000 wire transfer to an offshore account that I never authorized. Eleanor and Marcus froze, their faces pale. The diversion was all Leo needed. He scrambled out from under the desk, clutching the tablet to his chest as if it were a life raft, mirroring the way he had clung to Sarah's leg in the kitchen just days before. Dad! Leo screamed, running toward his father. Don't listen to her. I know where the money went. Leo, get back here. Eleanor shrieked, her mask of sophistication completely shattered. She lunged for him, but Arthur, seeing the raw terror on his son's face, stepped between them. What did you say, son? Arthur asked, his voice dangerously quiet. They did it, Dad, Leo said, trembling but brave. He held up the tablet. She lied. They stole the money. I recorded it. He pressed play. The room, which had been silent with tension, suddenly filled with Eleanor's voice, cold and triumphant. Framing the Black Maid was perfect. Arthur was so blinded by prejudice, he didn't even question it. Arthur's face went white. He looked as if he'd been struck. The recording continued. Marcus's voice, discussing the jet. Eleanor's voice, detailing the escape to Costa Rica, the plan to ruin him, the lie about visiting her sister. It was all there. Undeniable. No. Eleanor screamed, a desperate, animalistic sound. She lunged for the tablet, trying to smash it. You little brat. But Sarah, who had been standing silently by the door, moved faster. She stepped directly in Eleanor's path, blocking her from Leo. No, Sarah said, her voice low and firm. You won't hurt him again. Eleanor raised a hand to strike her, but Arthur grabbed her wrist. His face was a terrifying mask of rage and, beneath it, a profound, soul-crushing shame. He realized his own weakness, his own bias, had been used as a weapon against him and had nearly cost him his son. He released his wife's wrist with a shove and pulled out his phone. He dialed his head of security. Alex. They're in the library. Detain them. Call the police. Within minutes, the foyer was filled with security. Eleanor and Marcus, defeated and silent, were led away. The library was quiet again, save for Leo's shaky breaths. Arthur turned to Sarah. He opened his mouth, then closed it. He looked at the floor, at his son, and finally at the woman he had so terribly wronged. Sarah, he began, his voice cracking. God, I'm so sorry. Tears welled in his eyes, tears of shame. I believed a lie because it was easy, because of what she said about you. He didn't have to say the word black. They both knew what he meant. I failed my son. And I failed you. Can you ever forgive me? Sarah just looked at him for a long moment, the exhaustion of the past week washing over her. She didn't answer. Instead, she knelt, pulling Leo into a fierce hug, burying her face in his hair as he sobbed into her shoulder. Weeks later, it was Thanksgiving Day. The mansion was quiet. The enormous dining room, usually set for 30, was now set for only 3. The expensive, impersonal decorations were gone, replaced by a simple, warm centerpiece of flowers. Arthur, looking older but softer, carried the turkey to the table. He set it down and looked at Sarah, who was helping Leo into a seat. "Sarah," he said quietly, motioning to the head of the table. "Please, sit." Sarah hesitated, then took the seat. Arthur sat to her right, Leo to her left. They sat in silence for a moment, a new, fragile peace settling between them. Arthur carved the turkey. Sarah served the stuffing. It was quiet. It was small. As she passed Leo a roll, he looked up at her, his eyes serious. "Sarah." "Yes, sweetie." "Since Eleanor is gone, can I call you Mom Sarah?" Sarah's breath caught. The spoon she was holding trembled in her hand. Tears welled in her eyes, but this time, they were not for sorrow. She reached out, brushing the hair from his forehead, her smile radiant. "Yes, sweetie, you can." In the quiet warmth of that Thanksgiving, what began as a bitter lesson in prejudice ended in the beautiful, simple creation of a family. It's a powerful reminder that while assumptions built on hate are a darkness, the truth, even from the voice of a small child, is a light that can expose any lie. Like a seed planted in the coldest winter, kindness has a way of finding the sunlight and blooming when we least expect it. If this story touched your heart, perhaps consider sharing that warmth with those around you who may be judged unfairly, yet deserve to be truly seen.